A man named Mr. Orange is bleeding out in the back of Mr. White's car. This is because they were both part of a bank robbery that went wrong. When they get to a warehouse, a man named Mr. Pink shows up, who is another member of the robbery. Mr. Pink wants to leave Mr. Orange behind and go look for Joe, the man behind the robbery, but Mr. White says no and pulls out the gun on him. When they both point the gun at each other, Mr. Blonde shows up. Mr. White and Mr. Pink go and look for Joe, and then suddenly, Mr. Blonde is shot by none other than Mr. Orange. Turns out Mr. Orange was an undercover cop, and Mr. White and Mr. Pink get back to the warehouse, and Mr. Pink accuses Mr. Orange of shooting Mr. Blonde. Mr. White disagrees, but then suddenly Joe shows up and confirms that Mr. Orange is an undercover cop this entire time. Mr. White is disgruntled and pulls out a gun on Joe, and Joe a gun on him. Then suddenly, Joe is dead, Mr. White is injured, and Mr. Pink runs off with the money. When Mr. White gets down on the ground with Mr. Orange, the cops show up, and Mr. White has no other choice but to pull the trigger.